Hi, this is Micornus Phokane, the leader and the founder of Church Governance Solutions. I want to speak about the areas that the devil has actually authored or planted some confusion in the church. Areas where the devil has actually planted some confusion in the church of today. And I want to speak about that so that we can correct this and make sure that we are aware of the confusion that the devil has authored and that he has planted in the church, and be able actually to walk away from that and solve it in the church. Now, we see a lot of confusion that is actually encroached the church. And I want us to be aware of that, because if you're not aware of the confusion that is there, you're not going to be able to deal with it. And that's the reason why we want to speak about this topic, because I believe that we can make some strides in solving the situation of the church right now. As Church Governance Solutions, we are actually mandated to restore godly order in the house of the orderly God. And that's the reason why we want to address this topic, because we want to restore the godly order. Now, the first thing that the devil has actually planted confusion in, you'll realize that the ministers with fivefold ministry calling, they find it difficult today to stay and function in the same congregation. They are actually an implant of pride and lack of submission and arrogance of saying I cannot submit under someone, arrogance of saying I can make it myself as well, so therefore there's no need for me to submit under another person. So therefore you start to see that the fivefold ministry is not able to submit under under one another. And the reason here is pride, as I've said, and arrogance. Because majority of the people that have opened their churches, you realize that these are people that could have submitted somewhere, because just the visions that they present, you can see that there's no proper vision, there's no proper structure of how to run their churches, and therefore you realize that this particular individual was not really meant to be running their own church. But they were really meant to be submitting somewhere and be part of the fivefold ministry in that particular church. It is possible, saints, that a church can be led by a pastor, and you can get a prophet submitting under that pastor. You can get an evangelist who will be able to enhance the gospel of winning souls in the very same church. It is very possible that you will have the teacher who would actually, after the evangelist have ministered to people out there and won the souls, a teacher that will teach the people the word. It's possible. It's possible also to have an apostle in that particular church. And therefore, it is very important for us to realize that in the beginning, God meant that fivefold ministries could actually be under one roof. It's possible. And that's the way that the church should be structured. But the church now is suffering because other ministries are not there in church. An evangelist is running their own church, and the only menu there is evangelistic menu. And you find that a prophet is opening their own church, and the only menu there is a prophetic menu. And you find apostle having his own church, and that's that. No pastoral ministry in that particular apostolic church. And therefore you realize that also, that the pastor who's running a church without all the other fivefold ministries, it becomes problems because he may shepherd these people. But these people may need a proper teaching that could be that the pastor is not able to teach them at that level. That pastor needs an evangelist right there who would go and win souls and bring them back. So these are type of things that we lost in the church, and the devil has actually casted confusion that each one who's able to preach, they feel they should be opening their own churches, and in the beginning it was not so. The second confusion that the devil has planted in the church is that worshippers are no more able to submit, but they also being ordained into pastors, and they open their own churches as well. So each one of the people that are singing and leading worship in the church, the Levites of the church, who are supposed to be submitting in the local church and be the Levites and lead worship, they also feel they need to be ordained and open their own churches. And as a result, in the days that we're living in, we're having a lot of churches that are opened by musicians who are not even having a pastoral gift, who are not even able to pastor a church, but they've actually, because they can sing, they've got some following, and they open a church, and then people follow them and go into that church. But you find that that church sometimes becomes so bankrupt of the word of God, Because this man or woman is a worshiper, not the teacher of the word. Is a worshiper, not the pastor that needs to be, the shepherd that needs to be. Now, because of that, the confusion is even more, because when your worshiper is turned into a pastor, I don't dispute the fact that there are worshippers that are called into pastoral ministry. I don't dispute that. But we want to emphasize that there are those that are actually called to be worshippers and literal worshippers in the local church. And therefore, because of lack of submission, they go out and open their own churches. And that needs to be addressed by us as Church Governance Solutions. Now, the other thing is evangelists are moving into office of pastor and open own churches as well. And I'm sure you realize that some of the people are co-evangelists. They evangelize even in their own churches, whereby they're actually speaking evangelism message even to the people that should be matured by now and being able to go out and evangelize themselves. But this man or woman, because they're pure evangelists, every message that they preach or every sermon that they plan is actually evangelism messages or sermons. And therefore, we neglect actually the pastoring part, we neglect the teaching part, but we are actually focused on evangelism every day. And people that are being evangelized every day, even when they are saved or born again, they don't mature in the word because they don't come to know what the doctrine is all about. And that is a confusion brought by the devil as well. Pastors get ordained into an office of a bishop or an elder of the and when you look at it, as if a pastor is being ordained into a bishop or an elder, and some of them are basically now diluting what we call the ministry leadership functions or structures of the ministry. In real sense here, and we must understand that the church structures are different. There was Catholicism in the olden days, of course there's still, and there were Protestants as well, and I'm sure you would know that they were not functioning the same way. Now, we know that the church structures that we have is what we have, what we call congregational type of leadership structure. We're having what we call episcopal leadership structure. We've got what we call Presbytery leadership structures as well. And also we're having Pentecostal structure. Now, Pentecostal structure is not the same like Episcopal. If you look at Episcopal is led by bishops and archbishops and so on. But in Pentecostal, when we talk about bishops, then you talk about an elder, as somebody who's just overseeing some few home cells or some few gatherings of Christians around. Somebody who's submitting under fivefold ministry. Somebody would be submitting under a pastor, for instance, but yet maybe oversee some few structures of the church that he's submitting under. And that would be a bishop or an elder. That would be somebody who's a senior elder in that regard. But we have actually brought that an episcopal structure into Pentecostal, whereby bishops and archbishops are in the very same Pentecostal structure. And that's the reason why it brings confusion. And the devil is orchestrating this a bit even more, whereby he increases the pride out of the people. That if somebody is not ordained as a bishop, is just a pastor, and that person looks very junior than a pastor, and therefore that pastors are being looked down upon because they are not at a bishop level. And that's something that is a confusion, and it needs to be addressed. And I'm happy to talk about it as Church Governance Solutions, and we are addressing that confusion as well. But it's very important also that we look at that many pastors are calling themselves apostles, even at a novice stage, even at a very, very young age of their ministry, whereby somebody gets born again today, and of course they call themselves apostles immediately. And that type of thing is actually what it does. It actually raises expectations. Because as an apostle, you are expected to be somebody who's actually able to articulate the gospel or the doctrine and be able to be answerable to the doctrine of the day, where you are able to address issues of the doctrine. But if you're born again yesterday, of course, you are not matured in the word itself, so you are not matured in the knowledge of the Bible, so therefore you cannot be able to articulate the word or the doctrine and divide the doctrine properly. So called Calling yourself an apostle, you're just raising expectations. And we see people that are rushing into calling themselves apostles. Of course, we have seen young pastors, young ministers that are rushing to say, I'm apostle so and so. And sometimes most of the things is because of pride and don't want to submit under anyone at all. And that needs to be addressed too. Now, if we are going to look at this other one, many evangelists and pastors call themselves prophets as well, as they view this office of prophet higher than their calling. Now, they're confusing, okay? If you are a pastor, you are an evangelist, if you don't call yourself a prophet, then you are junior than a prophet. Because according to them, prophets are senior than pastors and evangelists. And therefore, everybody's moving into prophetic because they feel they are left behind. They're becoming junior and junior every day because there are more pastors more prophets that are emerging. And they're overseeing pastors and they are actually imposing to evangelists and pastors. And that is an error as well. Remember, the fivefold ministries as outlined in the book of Ephesians, we realize that the fivefold ministries are callings and they're on the same level. There's none superior there, there's none inferior there, according to God, but they're called in different gifts. And those gifts are necessary in the kingdom. So therefore, we cannot confuse that. Now, some claim to be called into the so-called deliverance ministry office. So deliverance ministry, as many are actually putting it at the level of for fivefold ministry. Remember that if you are to pray for somebody for deliverance, that's not a ministry itself. You cannot base your ministry on that. Because at the end of the day, God would have actually called you to evangelize. God could have called you maybe to become a prophet or a teacher and so on. But you are having obligation to pray for people, casting out demons and so on. And any other Christian, of course, can do that according to the mandate of the Bible, whereby you can cast the demons. And casting demons then doesn't make it a ministry. It makes it a mandate for Christians, all Christians, to pray for people and cast the demons out of people. And that's very important. So don't build a church based on deliverance or praying for people casting demons and think that is an order of the day. So that's what is a confusion as well. And we have seen new names like Measure 1, Measure 2, Measure 3, and names like Doctor, which are actually being put upon lives of people that have not achieved anything. And most of them, they are put into honorary schools that are bogus as well, and to become Doctor so-and-so. And when you trace it, you realize that even the school that is ordaining them or conferring that doctorate is not even legit. And that's problematic because it actually infiltrates some seniority spirit that is not even existing. So that's something that we need to look at as well. Others are called which means archbishops and so on. And therefore, I've said that archbishops should be in what we call episcopal structure. In Pentecostal structure, that just brings confusion, and that needs to be addressed as well. Now we have seen the confusion brought about by the color codes of the gowns and collars and clothes and all this as uniforms used by ministers in different Pentecostal churches. And these are not helping at all because they're bringing more confusion because we don't even know the colors, what they mean, the type of collars as well. And the apparel that has been brought is actually amazing. But we want to say this, that if you are a Pentecostal pastor, born again, what matters is not the clothing that you put on. What matters is much more about the type of calling that God has conferred on you, and therefore the type of alignment with that purpose and the preaching of the gospel without compromise. That's very, very important that we need to address that. But I need to end up here today. Your host, Micornus Phokane. I'm the leader and the founder of Church Governance Solutions. And we hope that you're following us, you are learning quite a lot, and these are great things that we bring in. We will touch another topic tomorrow, and I hope you'll join us. But before we check out, we want to remind you that we've got the social media platforms. Our Facebook page, Micornus Phokane, our Facebook page, Church Governance Solutions. Don't forget our YouTube channel as well that you need to subscribe to. And also don't forget our TikTok account. And click notification buttons in all of those so that you're notified each time we have posted a video of this kind. May the good Lord bless you. Allow us to check out right here until tomorrow. May the good Lord bless you. And cheers for now.